Oh shit! Hang on.
What?
What's the podcast called?
Yeah, and I was literally thinking that before.
Fuck.
Bengals and Bingo, the Union Clowns. It's perfect.
Yeah.
I don't know. We don't have to have it a name right now.
I don't know. I kind of want a name though.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
Shit.
Welcome to the No Name Union podcast.
Unity in the UK. Is that? I don't think that's anything. I don't think that's perfect.
Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. For the union makes us strong.
Hello and welcome to Unions in the UK. This is a union-based podcast that Corey and I wanted to create, and now we're doing it. Hooray! Corey, would you like to introduce yourself to the cool listeners?
Hi, my name's Corey. My pronouns are she/her. I'm a member of PCS, which is the Public and Commercial Services Union, the union for like the civil servants and public sector workers in the UK. I'm a member of the branch executive committee in my branch and the Young Members Network in the Northwest. That's all I got for me.
Cool. Hi, I'm Henry. Pronouns they, them. I'm a member of UCU and IWW. And I'd say Acorn, but I'm a very inactive member. So
Oh shit, I'm also a member of Acorn.
yeah. But yeah, well, I guess we're talking specifically about workplace unions, right?
I mean today, yeah, like we're going to
Yeah,
start
yeah.
off with workplace unions because obviously there's all the strikes going on, but
Yeah.
you know,
What's a strike? Anyway.
yeah.
I'm also on the communications sec for the Manchester branch of the IWW. Just for a bit of information, I help run the Twitter, and I'm trying to do other stuff, but I am functionally useless. So, cool. Corey, why do we want to do this? I'm going to put that on you.
Wonderful. I mean, this was my idea. I did just message you. I think it was during the heat wave we had last week. I messaged you fully in the grips of heat madness, being like, Henry, I've got to get the thoughts about unions and stuff out of my head, and other than posting on Twitter, the only thing I can think to do is a podcast. Like,
Nice.
yeah, like, you know, all the communists in like the early 1900s, every single one of them had their own little newspaper. The modern,
Literally,
yeah,
like,
the modern equivalent is starting your own podcast. So
it's straight up having your own Twitter meme page and having a podcast. That's how the commies do it nowadays.
yeah, living up to a rich tradition.
It's a tradition of posting just without stop. Without stop.
Non-stop posting the Communist Manifesto.
That's what Karl Marx had envisioned.
That's the first line. Post non-stop. Do not stop posting, my children.
God's sake. Dude loved posting in linen. Anyway. Fuck me. Right. So, what are we talking about today? What's the whole idea here?
So, today we just want to sort of lay out the situation for trade unions in the UK, because we're in the middle of a strike wave. It started, well, I don't know about started, but like, there've been a number of strikes going on for a while, and they're only ramping up. So, people can sometimes struggle to figure out why trade unions act the way they act and what they're doing and what the legislation is and what sort of constraints are put on them by the government. So we just want to start with an introduction to that, just so you sort of have a bit more context for what's going on with the strikes and why they've got to be this way.
Corey, imagine that I have somehow found this podcast and I saw the title of it, and I didn't know what any of it was. And even though this podcast has like maybe 3 listeners for this first episode or whatever,
Love you, Mum.
and love my mum, and um, and they're like sat here like, well, I don't know what a strike is. I don't know why this is useful, but it's nice context. So, a little bit of information about that.
Okay, a strike is when you, as a worker, as the person who produces something for profit at your job, which is then cycled back into wages for you and for management, you withdraw that labour. You stop doing the work in order to win concessions from management. And that's things like increased pay, better conditions. There was a lot of stuff in the UK sort of over the last couple of years with Deliveroo drivers who weren't necessarily striking for better pay so much as striking to be recognised as workers, and sort of withdrawing their labour. They stopped ferrying food around at set times to sort of, I suppose, cause damage to the employer, to sort of demonstrate how much value they bring, to show how worthwhile they are. And that's part of how you get management to concede on stuff, is you have to demonstrate to them how much value you bring and how much power you have when you and your co-workers all act together. And the simplest and most direct way of doing that is just to down tools and stop working. And that's a strike.
Speaking to the liberals in the room.
Again, I love you, Mum.
I won't start with that. Fuck me. Why can't workers just go to the management, as individuals, and suggest improvements? Why can't they just do that?
So, I mean, you can. It just won't get you anywhere. Like, you, the one person out of 100 people where you work, 1,000 more, you on your own saying, I want things to be better, management can sort of turn around to you and say, yeah, well, tough. We have all the power. We control whether you get paid. We control the work that you do. We control the way your day is structured. So you're going to like it or lump it, basically. It's when you go as part of a group, as part of a collective, you and your co-workers all get together and say, we all think this is unfair and we're not going to do it anymore. Like, that's when you actually have some power in the bargaining situation. I think it was like Mick Lynch saying, like, the alternative is to beg. Like, we don't want to beg for things to get better anymore. We want to bargain, and the only way that you and your co-workers can bargain effectively is as a unit with the power that you have as a group.
That's hot.
Yeah, and also a thing about strikes, as well as like being an effective way of improving things in your workplace, they are very hot and very sexy.
Yeah. The one thing people forget to consider is how hot and sexy it actually makes you. People think it's all about posting real good and getting all the likes and retweets, but no, it's striking is what makes you really hot and sexy.
Yeah, you don't need clout when you have the power of a union. That's
I swear I heard God and anime. I swear,
yeah, you
that's
need
the inflection you were going with.
God, anime, and the collective bargaining power of your colleagues.
Okay. Right. So it is hot strike summer at the moment. There's a strange phenomena at the moment. People seem to be not doing their work anymore for no reason. It's pretty weird, right? That everyone all of a sudden is just kind of like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to be here anymore.
Yeah.
How did we get to hot strike summer? Like, what happened?
basically the working conditions in the UK have been degrading for decades. The real wages versus inflation haven't really been keeping up for literally decades at this point, and that sort of, you know, only 90s kids will remember the financial crash of 2008. And
Classic.
yeah,
It was a good year. Good year.
yeah, and that's sort of, you know, kicked all this degrading into overtime, where businesses suddenly weren't raising wages even as fast as they had been before that, and the government insulated the people who caused the crisis from all of the fallout, which means that they're just continuing to do what they were doing in the run up to the fallout. They've
Well,
also God.
I was just gonna say, you need to protect those people because, like, what if we want another Fallout? What if we want a second one?
If yeah. Well, we've got a financial crisis at home, so we don't need another one.
Well, I don't know. I like because we live in a capitalist, system in a capitalist country. That gives us the variation to choose which financial crisis we have next, right? You can go into a supermarket. They have lots of brands of financial crisis.
Yeah,
That's the wonder.
Yeah,
That's the
yeah.
wonder of living in a capitalist system. You get to choose which one's next.
yeah.
You don't need just one.
Yeah, you've got your Nestle water crisis, or
Oh,
yeah,
yum.
yeah, your British gas energy crisis.
Christ.
You get a pick. Yeah, you've got your sort of like own brand housing crisis. That one's nice little.
That's got a good flavour to it.
Yeah.
Speaking to the lack of public sector pay raises, I said before, I'm a member of UCU. We were on strike in December and also in March, and then March again. There was kind of two. It's been part of the same ongoing strike action. And we might be going on strike again soon enough. But university staff, there hasn't been a pay rise in like what I think it was 10 years a year ago, so now 11 years.
That's quick maths, baby.
That's good maths. That's bad maths, actually, rancid maths. But yeah, so I imagine this is the same for a lot of public sector workers, where and especially the line from the higher ups is, oh, you got to take that up with the government, baby, and then the line from the government is, oh, take that up with your employers. So it's a bit frustrating as well. Just that's just some context. I've been affected by this one, so it's important.
Yeah, it affected you, the protagonist of
The protagonist, yeah.
of
We
the
are the two main
podcast.
characters
Yeah,
in this co-op game called the Workers' Struggles.
yeah. So yeah, like that's been going on for ages. As well as like wages in the private sector slowing down because of the financial crash and everything. The public sector has just been like choked of money. Obviously, you just said the education sector has been just brutalized by cuts and by a blanket refusal to see that there are going to be problems with not paying people enough to do what is a very difficult job.
I'm sure it's fine. I'm sure it's fine.
It's probably all going to blow over, right?
Yeah.
Or it won't, and you get to go on strike again.
No, you see, it's like a Seinfeld episode, right? There's a problem that arises. The Seinfeld gang have to, I don't know, they have to capture a villain who's been stealing their shoes for whatever reason. But by the end of the episode, it's like none of that ever happened. The start of the next episode, that didn't happen. Nothing happened. Everything is self-contained within 30 minutes. I also missed out as well. The way that we're paid is based on grades, and those grades, you don't really get pay rises within those. It's like you don't really get promotions or anything. You take on a new role that is in a different grade, and that is how you get more money. And that sometimes that is not ideal, especially when new roles come with like an insane amount of new responsibilities, and sometimes responsibilities that you don't necessarily agree with. Yeah, so it's rancid. It's bad. The vibes are off, and I'm gonna redact it.
Yeah, obviously, I also, as part of like PCS, I work in the public sector as well, so I'm really familiar with that. That the only way it seems to get a decent pay bump is to move to an entirely different job, because year on year your pay doesn't actually go up in any meaningful way. So the only way to fix that is to take on more responsibility and do a totally different job, even when the job that you were doing for not enough pay still needs doing. That still
Yes.
needs to happen.
Yeah.
It's not a good fix for people to have to jump out of positions that don't pay enough, because they still need doing. The work still needs to happen.
Definitely. And fucking usually as well, the jobs that pay median wage in the UK. So I've like every job I've had so far has been under median wage, median pay. What's the word? Which is like what 31,000, at the moment.
Something like that. The averages of like wage and stuff. That's really horrible maths, because
It is rancid maths.
yeah, they
it's-
just pick whichever one suits an argument, and it's
Yeah.
it's very difficult to understand what's actually happening, except that none of us are being paid enough. That's sort of my
Yes.
takeaway anytime I look at like, oh, the average in the UK is this and you're getting paid that, and like the average household income's this and your household's that. It's like none of us are being paid enough. That's
Yes.
that's
Yeah,
the
yeah.
be all
Full
end
stop.
all. Like there
Um,
is money. The money exists. I can see it. I can see the money.
I can see. I can literally see it. They're building a whole new fucking. This is another tangent. They're building a whole new, like, £1 million building onto the side of the university. At the same time, the university is turning to all of us and being like, "We don't have any money," and you're like, "I can see it. It's there. It's literally there." But yeah, on the topic of like, if you want to get more money, usually you have to take up some sort of like managerial role. I would rather die. It's wild that the only way to make more money is to inflict damage upon other workers. Like,
Yeah, and that's like, it's one of these really old ideas of trade unionism and sort of leftism more generally, I suppose, that the idea isn't to rise out of your class and stop
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
being working class and become managerial class and like become like a petty bourgeois dickhead, but in a university. The idea is that your class should raise with you. The conditions of the people on the lowest rung of society should all get better. That should be how things improve, is that the worst gets better and eventually
Yes.
stops being unbearably bad, until, you know, we can maybe get rid of the whole system entirely. That'd be good.
Whoa.
It's-
Whoa.
It's not working out for us, is all I'm saying. Is it's
Slamming the big button saying "call the cops."
yeah.
Yeah, like exactly. Like it should not be about taking all the working class people and making them middle or whatever class, like not working class. Basically, it should be about making it possible to not starve to death as a working class. That should be the goal, right?
Yeah.
So yeah. Well, that was a fair bit. We haven't actually spoken about. Have we spoken about the unions planning on going strike soon?
No, we haven't, because there are shitloads of them. There are so
Yeah,
many. The RMT is probably the most high profile. They work on the railways in the UK. They had a big, very public strike in the last couple of weeks, and I believe they're planning on going again, because the government and their employer are sort of not understanding that what they're asking for is a fair is fair treatment. They're not asking for the moon. They're not asking to establish the UK Railway Soviet. Like, that's not happening. They just want a fair.
Which is a shame, really.
Yeah, they could be asking for so much more. Is the point there? Like, they could be asking for loads more, and what they're asking for is actually really, really reasonable.
Yeah. I've been like particularly impressed with the RMT on how pretty much every aspect of comms that has come out from them has it kind of played the UK tabloids a little bit. Like like all the Mike Lynch stuff been pretty good. Like, I don't know, it just feels like the tabloids weren't particularly ready to deal with that.
Yeah, so this is a really interesting thing that's happened, and a complete tangent, but basically in the past, like in like as far back as like the 80s and stuff, there used to be like trade union representatives on the news constantly. Like, the government had like an industrial relations minister.
Nice.
And slowly over time, as the sort of power of the unions has been weakened through a series of successive legislations, they've replaced the like industrial relations stuff with like business stuff, as if it's the same thing and that we wouldn't notice. But the thing is that these trade union people, like the general secretaries and the presidents and stuff of the unions, who are well-practiced speakers, who are well-informed, on-the-ground people in these industrial disputes. Like, you saw it as well as with Mick Lynch. You saw Sharon Graham is really good at it. These people haven't gone away. They haven't stopped getting the experience that they were getting when they used to be invited on telly all the time. They haven't stopped getting the training through the union to deal with the media, to talk to like large groups of people and get the view of the workers across. They haven't stopped that or gone away on any of it. So as soon as they came back, it was a bit of a shock, because they're really practiced and polished performers.
Yes, yeah.
And the papers and the newsreaders have just been completely taken aback, because they're not used to it at all anymore, and they're not used to people being able to handle them in that way. But yeah, the union people just haven't gone away. They've still been working away in the background, improving stuff for people in their union, like in the union with them. But yeah,
it's always the way I gauge the spirit of the times of the UK is to go on a news outlet's Facebook page and look at the comment section.
Don't.
I think that's a good way of gauging.
That's so
the UK
unhealthy.
psyche.
That's so bad for you. That's just looking at an open sewer and going, oh, I know how to tell what the health of society is. I'm gonna drink the poop water. I'm gonna tell you how much E. coli is in there based on how much E. coli I get. Like,
yeah. It's a very quick way of fucking around and finding out. But I've noticed a shift in the comment sections, and they've gone from my brain hurt, ow, owie, ooh, my brain hurt, reading them, to, oh look, everyone's actually on the side of these unions and these strikes. Like, occasionally you'll get like an absolute melt talking non-stop garbage about how actually Mike Lynch is Jeremy Corbyn, but you know, he's bald now and also sexy, and how he's coming to steal all our shoes and shit like that. You still get the occasional like absolute moon people, but like no, there's some like real fucking at least maybe they're just louder, but even under like Daily Mail, like the people, like conservative like leaning folks are like looking positively upon all this, which is bizarre, right?
Yeah. Well, that's
but I mean, I guess
again is because this opinion had disappeared from like the mainstream, like it wasn't shown anywhere anymore. It doesn't mean people stopped agreeing with it. It's just they didn't get shown it anymore, so they couldn't parrot it, because a lot of people do just form their opinions by, what they read, what they consume, and
Yes.
things like that. And if they're not being given the left-wing perspective, they're obviously going to be super hostile to it.
Yeah.
And that's what my good friend Nomio called manufacturing consent, baby.
No, I have a few of his books behind me that I won't read because I'm incapable of reading. But I have the books, which is just as good, right?
Yeah. Your bookshelf looks very, very
Yeah.
well read, and that's
Someone comes
that's all
into
you
my
need.
room and is like, "Huh, wow, you know about you've read Zapatistas, you've read all this." And I'm like, yeah, I've read it. I've read the spine of the book and the blurb on the back. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
So it's a hefty read.
John McDonnell said that this one was a tour de force and essential for our times, and really, I think that's a great summary of that book. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, perfect. God's sake. Cool. Okay. Apart from the RMT, there's also, what is it? The CWU's going on strike,
Yeah.
or is currently on strike. I can't remember what their situation was.
So they just passed the CWU, the postal workers branch, the people who work in post offices across the UK, have passed a strike ballot with like 97% yes or something. Like
Yeah,
that.
it was tasty.
It was very good.
With a huge turnout as well,
huge
like
turnout.
80% turnout or something like that, right?
Yeah, so they've just passed that. So the post office is going on strike fairly soon. I don't know when. I don't think they've actually announced the dates that they're going on strike yet. But they're going on strike. PCS, where we are balloting members beginning the 26th of September, I believe, for 6 weeks we're
Oh, cool.
balloting. I know UCU, you've mentioned you might be going back on strike. I
Yeah,
know.
I mean, like, there's a... Not to... I won't. I'll resist. But, yeah, we will be balloting. Not as soon as I'd like, but still, we are balloting.
Yeah.
And I think that starts, like, August. So that's pretty fun.
Yeah, I know ASLEF, who are another union involved in transport in the UK, they're doing a strike. Well, no, they're doing a ballot rather. The barristers, I think.
Yes. Yeah.
For the criminal courts, I think it's criminal, but they've been doing action basically every Monday for a few weeks now. I know there have been strikes of bin workers in various places across the UK. There's so many. There's too many to keep track of. There's so many people going on strike now.
There's been quite a few recent wins as well. I mean, like, in UCU alone, like, it's not necessarily what we asked for, and it's something that I personally wasn't even fucking aware of. But basically, the reason there's a lot of the complaints, workers like related issues in the university, it's all around casualization, where some members of staff are just like part time or treated like contractors or whatever. Like it's not great. But one thing that I did not realize was a thing is that graduate, I can't remember what it stands for, but GTAs, which sounds cool, they weren't given sick pay at all. And one of the things we won for them,
cool.
one of the things we won for them was sick pay, and I heard that come from UCU comms. I was like, wait, they didn't have that? Like, oh shit! Like, oh my god, because they do absolutely shitloads of work, and at the ass end of the university pretty much all of the time.
And that's,
so I mean,
that's the
that
thing,
was a W.
Yeah, and that's the thing with like these bigger strikes and everything, is that there's going to be issues across even your own union that you're not necessarily aware of that are being campaigned on, because different people in different sections of a business are treated, or an organisation rather, not all businesses. Different people in different sections of an organisation are treated differently for obvious reasons, which means they've got different matters to raise with an organisation, and it's not really possible for you as a single person to keep track of them all, which is why the collective action is really good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, all these have been going on for a while. All these different sort of build-ups to strikes and ballots have been going on ages, and the ballots themselves run for weeks. And there's a reason they've got to do that, and that's all because of the anti-trade union legislation that we've got in place in the UK.
Yes. This is where I'm pretty head empty. I know the legislation sucks and is rancid and bad and awful and should get in the bin. But I don't have a decent bigger picture image of this, whereas Corey is a smart goblin who likes to get her hands in all the dirty deals. So what's the legislation like?
Okay, so from like 2016, the Tories brought in this new legislation about what a trade union has to do to go on strike. So the big one, like the big sort of hurdle for a trade union to overcome, is you've got to get a 50% turnout and a 40% support requirement. So that means half of the workers half of the people eligible to vote in a strike, you all need to turn out. So if the example on the little guide breakdown that I've seen is, if 100 workers are eligible to vote and only 49 turn out, even if all 49 vote in favour of striking, you can't go on strike because you haven't met a 50% turnout requirement. And the 40% support requirement means 40% in total need to support the strike. So basically, again, going back to like the 100 workers who are eligible to vote, if 50 vote, at least 40 of them have to vote in favour, because the percentage that you need to reach is based on 100% turnout, not based on percent of the people who did turn out.
Yeah.
It's basically, the idea is that if people don't get back to the union about a strike, it's assumed that you don't want to strike, so it's taken as a no. But because of problems with it having to be sent via the post,
There's a lot of problems in the post.
Yeah, there's a lot.
I'll talk about that after you're done. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely fine. Yeah, because of problems with getting stuff back to people via the post, because of problems with getting messaging out to people, because of all these kinds of problems, and how a ballot has to be conducted, because it has to be sent via post to you. You need to send it back, and then it needs to arrive at the union headquarters by a certain date, which is why all the ballots go on for like 6 weeks, because they've got to send out the ballot and have it returned within the balloting period. You can't just ballot at a workplace. You can't just ballot like online. You can't ballot in any way but the post, and it just makes it a real hurdle for trade unions to strike, because it's hard to get all of those ducks in a row to get it. Like,
yeah, it's an I'll try that again. It's an insane expectation to ask, sort of thing. But I guess that's a point, right? Like,
yeah,
we need to discourage this from happening.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that it was brought, so as well as like discouraging it from like strike action from happening, the legislation was actually brought in when unions were like historically at their weakest. So in 2016, when the legislation was brought in, it was like 800,000 work days lost per year to strike action, which means basically 800,000 days of work were not done because a worker was on strike. So that could be like 200,000 people going on strike for 4 days. It could be one person somehow going on strike for 800,000 days.
It sounds scary though if you say 800,000 days though.
Yeah, but then you compare that to work-related accidents and injuries. At the time, 28.2 million days lost to work-related accidents and injuries because your employer's not taking your health and safety seriously enough.
That's a number that I don't like. I'm not a fan of that number.
Yeah. So this legislation was brought in when that was the sort of state of things. Was like there was no massive shutdowns of the economy. There was no like vindictive behaviour by the trade unions to try and bring employers to their knees. It was already a really low ebb in the power of trade unions, and I think that's part of the reason why they managed to bring it in, why there wasn't like a public outcry of stuff, because trade union activity had just been slowing down for a number of years because of various other bits of legislation. And yeah, they've also got to give like 2 weeks notice of any industrial action.
Which just gives any employer plenty of time to, one, seed the idea that striking is bad to all the workers because they control all the comms of the workplace sort of thing, and then also to prepare for that.
Yeah.
Usually by hiring a shitload of scabs.
Yeah, and that's what this is. Like, they've doubled the amount of time. Like, this legislation doubled the amount of time that an employer has to prepare for these strikes, to like present a media strategy and stuff. And then on top of that, the mandate that you get. So if you win the ballot, if you get your 40% threshold on your 50% turnout, that ballot is only valid for then 6 months. So
yes, yeah.
Yeah, so what an employer can do is basically when they see that you get a ballot in for a strike and that you can go on strike, what they can do is bring you back to the table and be like, yeah, we'll negotiate, and just drag that out as long as they can, because if they can make those negotiations go on for 6 months, that means you have to reballot. And
but the employers would never do that. No. Why would they do that? Why would they do that? They're on our side, right?
Yeah, your boss is your friend.
He's my friend. It's a family.
It's a family. The boss is like the daddy. He's like the daddy of the family.
You can't say that. Oh my god! Someone goes into work being like, "Oh, can't wait to work for my daddy all day." No, here we go. Okay, it's like a kink. Like, fuck me, fucking. Daddy kinks for your boss in the workplace. The only reason you turn up because you're into it. Hate that. Hate that. Anyway, I was gonna mention something, and then we got too distracted by.
You were going to talk about
the Post. Yeah. So one of our more recent ballots, one that wasn't actually passed. So one of the things the university and college union UCU did while they were balloting for strike action is there was two separate issues. One was the 4 fights, which is for an end to casualization or less casualization. I can't remember which one it was. Better pay, safer working conditions, and a sort out to not safer working conditions. Sorry, end to workload issues, and a sort out the equality issues. So basically there's the black and minority ethnic people and women earn significantly less than their male counterparts in university, and it's rough. That has been getting slightly better, but that's one of the 4 fights sort of thing. So that's one campaign, the 4 fights, and the other one is for pensions. And the 4 fights one passed, the ballot passed, and it was great, and we went on strike for that, hell yeah. But the pensions one, there was a reballot for it, because it failed at Christmas. There was a reballot for it, and so they had to send out new ballots to everyone. I got my letter 3 days before the deadline, just because of quote-unquote post issues and stuff. But I am not sure if mine made it back in time, because 3 days is the point. They say try and send your letter before at least 3 days before the cutoff point, because that way you can then make sure it actually arrives where it's supposed to. The mail issues, considering mail issues and stuff. So I suspect, because that was happening a lot in Manchester, there was just like a load of like really late mail, and
Yeah.
I suspect that significantly affected the response to it, because we didn't even make threshold, like barely, not barely, but like by a significant margin, like we didn't make threshold, whereas the other ballot definitely made threshold. So like, yeah, it's deliberoundly. I don't want to say deliberately. It's not like there's people sat at an evil like round table being like, how do we fuck up people even more? It's like, it's an evolution of the system that we live in based on interests, and
Yeah,
it just so happens to be in people's interest to make sure that their workers are working all the time, and so they do things that make it seems like sense, like you got to make sure that these people definitely want to go on strike, so like bullshit like that, and that builds up consistently to create the worst nightmare that you can imagine.
Yeah,
like,
it's all class relations all the way down, and like as well as like protecting the employer, there's also a bunch of this act that seems like to if I'm gonna put a tinfoil hat on here, it seems like it's to punish people for organising. So there's got to be like a union official supervisor for pickets under this legislation.
Yeah.
So this is more about like once a strike is happening than like getting it happening, but it's all part of the sort of same thing that sort of puts people off organising it and everything. So that official supervisor has to be easily identifiable, whatever, must carry a letter of authorization from the union to be shown to employers by request. They need to be constantly carrying that letter, because if they're not carrying it for whatever reason, if it gets lost or whatever, you're a human, you lose letters, you don't bring it with you.
I mean, like, especially on strike days when there's a shitload of stuff going on.
Yeah, there's so much happening.
There's a load of resources you have to, like, maneuver around places. Like, you have to make sure everyone's, like, okay at each picket point. Like, and like, all this, like, stuff that's going on. You're bound to lose something. Like, it's insane. Like, yeah.
Yeah, and basically these strike can be labelled illegal if you just leave it on the kitchen table on the morning. Like, the whole strike can be labelled illegal after everything.
Which is...
Yeah. So,
Nonsense.
There's a lot of pressure put on the people who are organising the strike. If I am correct...
I was just going to say, fucking very British to be like, have you got your striker's license?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, have you got your striker's license? They've also got to give the police their name, contact details, and the location of the picket. You've got to register with the cops that you're responsible for a picket. So, like, the cops have you on a register of troublemakers. And even the police, like chief police officers who were consulted about this, were like, no, the law works fine. We don't need this extra power. We don't need this. Because, they've got a long history of infiltrating like trade union movements and things like that, and obviously
yeah, we don't need this. We're already in.
Yeah. They don't need the extra lists of people, and like they're there at the pickets more often than not. They're there at the pickets watching anyway. Like
yeah.
Like, it doesn't matter that they're putting these organisers on a register, but it's just an extra little bit of of intimidation for people.
Oh yeah, we had just as while we're talking about intimidation and stuff. One of the days on our strike, there was like the university was like, oh yeah, we need to like, we heard some union troublemaking, so we needed to up the amount of security guards by certain picket lines and stuff, which is very funny because there was horrific weather that day, so the picket points were we postponed them for one day, and everyone just stayed at home because the weather was dangerous. Like
Yeah.
debris flying everywhere will injure people and will put people in hospital, sort of thing. But the university just wanted to make sure, so they left a shitload of security guards just stood there at the picket points for us. So that was nice of them. That was scab picketers. They were there. They were hired to cover our strike from the strike, which is very cool of them.
Yeah. So that's sort of it with like the build up to like going on strike and balloting and everything. There's other stuff in this legislation that does continue, like the tactics of intimidation and stuff. But while we're talking about scabs, I want to just talk about the new legislation that came in earlier this week. Now, the government, I'm going to read off the .gov.uk page here. Okay. So what this new law does, I can't for the life of me find the actual name of the law, so do not at me, nerds. The law has been changed to allow businesses most impacted by industrial action to fill vital roles with temporary skilled workers, who all definitely exist. Reforms will ensure critical public services and people's daily lives remain uninterrupted by staff strikes. And the business secretary has said, in light of the militant trade union action threatening to bring vital public services to a standstill, we have moved at speed to repeal these burdensome 1970s-style restrictions. Now, what those restrictions are was it was illegal for a company or an organisation to bring in strike breakers, basically, to bring in scabs, to fulfil the roles that were being striked over, I guess is the best way of phrasing that. So basically they've changed the regulations so that a business can now just bring in scabs legally, and no one wants this. No one except the government and the people who, like management, want this, including the agency sector. The people who are going to be asked to do this, they actually, in June this year, issued a full joint statement with the Trade Union Congress, which is like the governing body for a load of the unions in the UK. Or not necessarily like a governing body. They're like a collective group of trade unions who come together and sort of figure out direction for travel for the unions and everything. But they issued a joint statement with their equivalent, but for agency companies. So like the top agency companies all came together with the top unions and said that it is an unworkable plan.
Absolutely.
To ask agency workers to fill in during strikes. The chief executive of the agency said that in all disputes, our aim should be to resolve conflict, not to prolong it. Inserting a different firm's workers into the middle of a dispute can only ever inflame tensions. And it's like, yeah, absolutely it will. It will piss everyone off. And the trade union deputy general secretary was saying, once again, this government is showing its disregard for international law, which these proposals almost certainly breach. So,
yummy.
Yeah, the Tories have basically just decided that obviously they don't care about international law. What's going to happen to them? They don't care about any of this. So they're just making it more difficult for you to exercise your rights as a worker by putting you off striking with all of these restrictions on when you can go on strike and how you can go on strike and all of this nonsense, and then saying, oh yeah, and also we're changing it so that the business can replace you for as long as necessary, usually paying agency workers more than their actual workers. Agency workers always cost more than in-house staff. So it's just a ridiculous thing to be able to, for a business to be able to do and be arguing in good faith. If they can afford to hire in agency staff, they can 100% afford any wage uplift or conditions improvements that you're asking for.
Yeah, for real. Like it's bizarre, right? Especially if it goes on long enough. They're just they've. I know it's not the ideal solution, but what they've done is they've hired a new worker at better pay. Like at that point, like what they're doing, it's bizarre. But also, like I fucking love the wording from the UK government's like notice of this new scab law, where they're talking about skilled temporary workers. I think we should be afraid of these workers. They're terrifying because where are they getting all these skills from all of a sudden? It's quite impressive. Like,
yeah, I don't really want to be on a train with someone who's had a 30-minute induction from a HR rep to here's how you make the train safe, here's how you make sure the trains don't crash into each other or come off the tracks. I don't want to get on that train. Trains go real fast and they're very heavy.
They're real fast, real heavy. I'm just like I'm impressed that they managed to get all that experience to be able to do that. It's very impressive. Like in 3 days that they have to find out, they're suddenly like, oh yeah, I know how to drive a train. Yeah, it's fine. Got this.
Yeah,
I've got 10 years of experience within 3 days. It's great.
And like, there is like a historical precedent for a government bringing in agency workers to cover these kinds of disputes, and it working in the government's favour by breaking the strike because the workers don't expect to be replaced and they expect there to be a bunch of problems if they are replaced. So there is like precedent. Like it was a big thing in the US. Reagan, it was the Air Traffic Controllers Union who had ironically backed Reagan during his election campaign, and they went on strike being like, we're air traffic controllers. If you want people not to die in a plane, you sort of need us, and we're going on strike for these better conditions. And Reagan just said, haha, fuck you, and hired in a bunch of scabs, and that broke the power of that union because it meant that their strike didn't work properly. So there is this precedent that this kind of thing can hurt strikes, but it hurts strikes at the expense of the people. At the expense of the people using the services. That
service,
It's not hurting. It's not hurting the government who's going to bring them in. It's not hurting a university who brings in scab lecturers. It's not hurting not hurting like National Rail who are bringing in people to manage the railways, because they're not going anywhere. Like, National Rail isn't going anywhere, ultimately. You can't close it down and replace it with something else. It needs to exist for the trains to happen.
Yeah.
So if they bring in scab workers and a bunch of people die and a bunch of people get hurt and, ultimately they break the strike, whatever, all that's happened is the strike has been broken and a bunch of people have died. Nothing has improved for anyone else at all. And things only get worse from there. It's just such a horrible thing. It's such an awful thing, which, again, is epitomised by even the agency workers don't want to do this. They understand that it will make everyone angry. It will just upset everyone.
And also that they're putting themselves at risk if they do that. Like, oh yeah, sure, I'll fucking drive a train. Whoopsie, the whole thing came off the track. Like, Jesus. Well, I mean, there was... even in the RMT strikes, who aren't train drivers but rail workers, there was like accidents and all kinds of shit because of that.
Yeah,
like,
because
they hired in a shitload of agency workers.
They didn't hire in agency workers because they weren't legally allowed to. It was people who hadn't gone on strike who didn't have the relevant experience. So it was just people being moved around, which is tremendously unfair on them. Right. And to those people, I say join the RMT and go on strike.
Please. Please join the RMT.
If you are put in a difficult position by your employer, join your union and get involved with it, and make sure that you can go on strike when you're put in a difficult position by your employer. That you have the power to say no to this kind of this kind of bullshit.
Yes.
Ugh.
And if there is no representation at your workplace, perhaps it's for you to consider being that representation, sort of thing.
Yeah, I think that's some. Oh, go on.
I was just going to say, I know my friends are in workplaces where there's not necessarily any union reps or union representation full stop. Like, they don't know if anyone else is in the union and stuff. All I can say is that you can do that. And that would be incredible if you did. I know it's easier said than done, but like, I don't know. It's got to start somewhere, right? And if you need training for that, the unions offer that training. I'm slightly biased, but the IWW organizer training and rep training is pretty good. It's pretty good. And like the main thing to look out for is expect to be seen as a troublemaker, because like that is essentially what you are to the workplace. But like, don't let that put you down, sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, even being seen as a troublemaker, like
It's cool as hell.
One, it's cool, it's sexy, you're never gonna die. Firstly, there's that, and secondly, like, it doesn't actually usually cause all that much bother for you. Like,
No,
even being seen as a troublemaker. Like, I'm the organizer in my branch, so I do the staff inductions, I send all the emails, I do a bunch of like public-facing stuff, as it were, for the union, and I have not had it be an issue with my actual work, because I'm good at my job, because people in unions are good at their jobs. No one's doing it to just shirk off, but you know.
But if you are, that's still fine.
Yeah. If you are shirking off, cool. They don't pay you enough. I'm not going to argue with that.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that's the thing, is even being seen as a troublemaker it's not the end of the world.
And the thing is, like, managers, they have a position to uphold, and their job is ultimately against what is good for you. But as a person, they don't want the workplace to be awkward and stuff. Like, if they know you're a troublemaker, they're not exactly going to be like weird with you. They don't want to be. I mean, like, some of them I imagine will be weird with you, but for the majority, like, they don't want to be weird with you. They want an easy job. Like, they don't want to turn up and see one of their coworkers and just be like, oh, they hate me. They don't like me. Oh.
Yeah, they want to be liked, and that's a really powerful thing as a union representative or organizer to keep in mind, is that they want you to like them, so you can use that to your advantage. Like, you can levy that position into getting concessions from them, because they don't want to be disliked. They don't want you to be a problem. They want everything to just tick over, and you can use that.
Yeah. And so there's a discussion around, like, there's a discussion to be had about, you know, managers in unions themselves, and like whether that is helpful or whether that's a hindrance or whatever. But there are managers, and I wouldn't 100% trust them, just because like their interests differ from yours, but there are managers that can be useful and helpful sometimes. I know that's bizarre for me to say, but like, being in the IWW where managers are outright banned, but like, there are sometimes they can be useful and deliberately useful, as opposed to useful and, you know, playing into your cards, sort of thing. As always, be careful with them, but you know, there's I can't remember what I was going to say. Fuck it. The end.
The end. That's all she wrote. Yeah, if you can if you can make their life easier by making the conditions of your workplace better, that's a win, because
Yes.
they're not going to fight you on that. They're going to fight with you on that, because ultimately they also want their lives to be easier. That's
Yeah.
the whole thing. Is their interest is in maintaining a status quo up until a point where the status quo becomes more of a problem. That's when they can be potentially useful, in my experience. Um, but yeah, like this is all sort of stuff of like how you can help out with with your with your union getting to the point of striking. Like thinking tactically about how like you can leverage different workplace relationships to getting things changed, to making improvements. If you're not in a union, as Henry mentioned, the best way you can help improve things in your workplace and get to the point of being able to go and submit a strike ballot and everything like that. Best way you can help is by getting involved, organising it yourself with you and a couple of your trusted co-workers to get things rolling, talking to more people, finding out what the issues in your workplace are, and talking through how you would address them. In terms of if you're already part of a union, if there's a registered union where you are, it's a really simple way of how to help is you just need to get involved. You just need to make sure your contact details are up to date. I'm pretty sure every single union you could be part of has a website where you have a little account section which has your
Yeah.
personal
Yeah.
details and stuff on. Make sure that's up to date. Right now, it'll take you 2 minutes. Go, make sure it's up to date. If you can't log into that, there will be an email address you can get in touch with to get you access to that, to make sure your account is up to date. You also need to make sure that you're listening to what like announcements your co-workers are making from the union. You need to make sure you're engaging with it. You can offer like your branch executive in your workplace help. There will almost always be something to do, even
Yeah.
if it's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
like a one-off little thing that's occurred to the rep in that moment. You
I
can
was
just
about to
ask.
say like, I was about to say like, the if you don't know what to do to help, the easiest way to do it is email your branch or talk to your rep and say what can I do to help, and they'll without a doubt have something for you to do. Like always.
Yeah, and even if that is really similar to how it works for you if you're not part of a union and you're organising one, how to help in the moment might be just talk to your co-workers, find out what's going on, so that you all know what the issues are and you can all address them collectively.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think we want to sort of wrap it up there. We've been talking for about an hour.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So we want to sort of wrap it up there. The last thing to direct people to, if you want to find out where the strikes near to you are happening, the best place I've found to go to is strikemap.co.uk.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah, there's a cool little map there showing strikes in your area that you can go and visit on the picket. People love to be visited on the picket. You take them
Oh
some
yeah. Yeah.
biscuits,
Yeah.
you take them some water if you can afford to. Otherwise, just turning up saying, "Hey, I can hand out some leaflets for you. Hey, I'm just here to support you. I love what you're
Like
doing." Like,
even standing around and looking like you're supporting is very useful. Like having the numbers on a picket line does a lot of work. Like
yeah, a lot of it's morale. A lot with like these longer strikes, it can be really draining for the people going on them. You can find that you're sort of getting exhausted doing it day in, day out, because it's a lot of work to maintain the momentum. Having the people turn up and support you is really really good. It's like in football, it's like the home field advantage thing of like you've got people like cheering you on, and that just helps. Okay, yeah, that's sort of everything from us. The documents that I've referred to sort of help my understanding of the legislation and the different groups' positions on it. They're all going to be in the show notes.
yeah.
Yeah, follow us along. We'll be talking more about how you can get involved in strike action, what you can do to help support that. We'll be talking about like the history of trade unions. We're going to try and reach out to some people whose unions are on strike, see if we can do some interviews with them, talk about their
I'll
particular
try.
strikes.
I'll try and be a little bit less head empty about a lot of this stuff. I'm just really dumb. I think I think this is incredibly useful for everyone to listen to, but incredibly useful for me because I'm dumb and stupid and an idiot. And
I mean, you're not. You're lovely and you're wonderful, and I appreciate and value you, comrade. But yeah, yeah, that's it.
I think that scrub-a-dub-dub.
Scrub-a- Yeah, this is.
Get the fuck out.
Get the fuck. Why are you still here? Leave.
Go home. Oh god.
This is Bingles and Bingo.
Bingles.
The Union Clowns signing off.
Bye.
Solidarity forever, for the union makes us strong.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think just unions in the UK or some shit, or
The unions in the UK, we carry our happens. Yeah, okay, fuck it. We can do that. Like unions in the UK, rename pending.
yeah, the Unnamed Union Podcast,
Oh my god.
the podcast formerly known as Unions in the UK, and just never have an actual name. Just be like,
Good.
yeah, we used to be called this.
Oh my god.
Yeah, sure. We've been doing this for 6 minutes now.
We do, yeah. We have 6 minutes of absolute bum left. So
Like six minutes of us just screaming into the
it's
voice.
just like, I'm ready. Oh no, I'm not ready.
Oh yeah, very much.